Welcome to episode 78 of Fresh Air at 5. This week, I listened to 4 podcasts, and the reason for that is that I got no energy. I had COVID last week, but I'm recovering. I thought I was back, and well, I'm not back, but I am back a little bit. So, trying to do a little bit of walking and listening and learning, and so I'll share my thoughts with you as we dig into some organization for EdTech in the summer. We learn about an international school educator. We hear about, check this out from Brian and Ryan and their happenings going on in their spaces and using non-tech sometimes for learning. And then finally, at the end of the week, I listened to Tom Schimmer Show, episode 75. So thank you so much for taking a listen. I hope you listen to the end. And shout out to Cameron Ross in Australia, who is now a listener of Fresh Air at 5. So thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it. Have a fabulous day. And without further ado, episode 78.
I'm Alfonso Mendoza, host of the My Ed Tech Life podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at Fresh Air at 5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PLN, Monday, June 27, 2022, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and as I stepped out the door, it was 19 degrees Celsius, and we have been in a heat wave here, highs of 32, 33 degrees Celsius, and considering the cold June that we've had, it turned on in a flash last week. The week started, it was cool, and then all of a sudden it was really, really hot. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with as far as weather-wise. Not complaining. It's beautiful, it's spectacular, and the sunrise this morning was awesome. In the back there, you can see Mount Baker. Can you see it? I don't know, can I? Maybe go like this. There's Mount Baker right there, and the sun is just rising on Mount Baker, and I love my morning walk. Last week, you may have noticed that Carpenter wasn't out walking, and how come that was? Well, I had contracted COVID, and I got a dose of COVID, and I don't know the variant name or anything like that, but 2 Fridays ago, I came home from my morning walk with my walk in the woods with my wife, and I was feeling gross, and just not feeling great, and through the course of the weekend, it had turned into COVID for me, fever, sore throat, headache, congestion, all those things, and to the point that I had to hand off emceeing grad to a colleague at work. And so as working with the team, staying organized is super important because, you know, if you got to hand off duties, you got to be able to do those relatively quickly. So I'm doing better. I'm like 99%. I've got a tickle in my throat, but I'm feeling my energy's back. So I don't have that energy issue that a lot of people have. And so I'm feeling pretty good. All right. So I missed listening to podcasts and learning last week. Excited to get back to it this morning. And this morning I listened to Got Tech, the podcast with Eric and Nick, episode 114, how to get your EdTech organized this summer, 11 tips for doing so. And I'm going to jump into one more thing right away to talk more about that. One more thing for June 27, 2022. As I was saying, I was listening to episode 114 of Got Tech, the podcast with Eric and Nick. And they bring us 11 tips for how to get your EdTech organized this summer. It's everything from taking a look at the hardware you have around you in your classroom for productivity and efficiency, what's available to you and your students for making workflow better and more efficient, how to organize your inbox, how to organize your Google Drive, how to think about organizing your bookmarks in your Chrome browser, and all of these awesome, fantastic Google-ish things that we need to consider. Well, gents, I'm in the midst of a transition that is kind of rocking my world because we are moving out of Google in my district officially next July, but I'm starting the transition now to move into Microsoft so that I can be Microsoft efficient and get my students trained up in that before it's a necessity. So great, my middle schools and secondaries next year, we will train them to use Microsoft in my teaching space and probably get into Microsoft Teams class and dig into all manner of Microsoft education things. So, I like the list that you guys got. I like the ideas that you have, and a lot of those things are transferable skills. Those are skills for working in an ed tech and a technology-based world of keeping yourself organized, managing information and data flow, and all those things. So that, it's interesting for me because I'm a big Google guy and I would happily stay right where I am. But when work has you move, you got to start thinking about things a bit differently. And so how can I support my colleagues and my my students? I have to become more adept myself. So I'm going to start digging into some of these ideas you guys have and looking at the content I have in my Learn 34 Google Drive and moving it into my OneDrive. All right, guys, have a fab day. Nice to see you. Talk to you soon. Bye. The last thing for June 27, 2022, as I wrap up my morning walk in my refreshing fresh air at 5, as I have gotten out and the sun is shining on my face and the weather is warm, skies are clear, breeze is blowing. I listened to episode 98 of the Ignite EdTech podcast, and I would encourage you to listen to this podcast. Craig Kemp out of Singapore, he brings us a weekly podcast that has 5 or 6 segments in it, and he talks about some ed tech. He talks about a highlight. He talks about an educational thought, and he has an interview with a guest. And I really like how he brings the variety of I'm just hearing a dog bark. He brings the variety of different topics to us, and as a North American listener, it's nice to hear conversations and discussions from the other side of the world. As Craig, you bring guests like Steve Sostak out of Inspired Citizen, and he was at Beijing International School and has now moved to The Hague. And just the fact that he's an expatriate working overseas, and I don't really understand how that all works, but I do see it, and it's great to hear a perspective from a different part of the world. We have to engage in our communities is one thing that I heard today, and being an educator that parachutes in, we can't just expect the community to embrace what we've got, but we have to be a reciprocal learner. And that goes the same here. We are in Canada and working with our different communities in our classrooms and our students. We need to be reciprocal learners for their spaces, because their spaces are not necessarily my space. My education experience is not necessarily that of my students, and I need to be open-minded to hear what they have to say and what they bring to the classroom. All right, so take a listen to episode 98. 2 more to go. Speak pipe coming. Craig, have a great day. Bye-bye. Hey, Okay, PLN, June 30 here in my world, which means today is the very last day of teachers being in our school buildings, and summer officially begins at the end of today for our teachers here in my school district and mostly across my province. So we go long here in Canada and in our part of the world, and yeah, it's a good day. I got some tasks to do, finish up the grad edition of our newsletter so that the grads can have that to put into their yearbooks, things like that, and just some meetings, wrapping up some things. I'm teaching summer session, which is different than Ryan O'Donnell's summer school at his school. So mine's not like jail. It's different. It's online. We use some technology. And so I'm talking about Ryan O'Donnell and Brian Briggs, as I just listened to episode 148 of Check This Out. And it's titled SSR. I miss what that stands for. Summer School Resources, maybe. I don't know. But I missed what it was called. So go check out episode 148 of Check This Out with Ryan O'Donnell and Brian Briggs. They bring us real life confessions and how we can use Padlet to collect those kinds of things in our meetings and our staff meetings, and how planning goes on, and what Brian's doing this coming fall as far as being involved in ed tech in his district. So that's super cool, as opposed to just technology, pulling wires and doing stuff like that. And Ryan O'Donnell is teaching summer school, and how he is using no tech in his room, which is surprising, but there's a point to it, and you'll have to listen to hear what Brian's point is. All right, for me, this is my second walk this week. Thought my energy was back after I had COVID last week, and it's not. So this is a short Fresh Air at 5 this week, episode 78, but that's okay. We all got to slow down, and COVID slowed me down. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye. Okay, one more thing for June 30th, 2022. At the top of Check This Out with Ryan O'Donnell and Brian Briggs, episode 148. They bring up my name because where they are, it's National Fishing Day in California, in the United States. And that's pretty cool, because in Canada, in my province, for sure, not sure about the other provinces, but it was family fishing weekend on the weekend of the 17, 18, 19, which means you can go fishing anywhere in our province without a fishing license and take a kid fishing. Super great. Was planning on doing so, but then I was struck with COVID, and I was going to take my daughter to go fishing, fly fishing with me, and we didn't do that. But we would have caught fish, likely, and we would have eaten sushi on the side of the boat. No, actually we wouldn't. We'd never do that, because you have to prepare your fish, otherwise you get worms, and those apparently are bad for you, like tapeworms and things. So don't do that. But we would have probably put some of those fish back had we caught them. So yes, the connection, and near Moose Jaw, I'm about probably better part of 1,600 kilometers away from Moose Jaw, which is close on a global scale. And yeah, all right, just saying hi to you guys again, and hope you guys, Ryan and Brian, are doing well. Did you guys get fishing on National Fishing Day? No, you're recording a podcast, and Ryan was getting ready for his next day of summer school. All right, talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye-bye. And the last thing for June 30th, 2022, listen to Check This Out, episode 148 with Ryan and Brian. And gentlemen, the secret word is snuffleupagus. So that's the reminder that you guys got to do a live recording in Ryan's driveway before he's done summer session to get that update. So there you go. And that's all. That's my last thing. Have a fabulous day. Bye. One more thing for July 1, 2022. Continuing my thoughts on episode 75 of the Tom Schimmer Show. Tom talks with Zaretta Hammond, who is the author of Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. And so, Tom, this is another one of those things that I have to work through and figure out how it fits into all of the other things that I have to do as an educator. And I think it's important that I be immersed and be kind of engaged with a number of different things so that I can start to shape my practice differently. I appreciate you talking about culturally responsive teaching and the brain with Zaretta. And Zaretta, you brought a gold mine of information and sharing. And the one thing that stood out to me was the 3 levels of culture, that being deep, shallow, and surface, and how we look at mostly surface culture as, what culture is. But is it the deep part? Is it the roots? Is it our background that we come from? And do we even understand that as individuals and as, learners? I know that for myself, I haven't thought a lot about my deep culture, though it's there. And why is it there? Because it's there. But how am I engaging with it compared to wanting to affect surface culture around me? All right, so that's the thick conversation. There's a whole lot more. I had done no justice to this, so go and listen to episode 75 and Tom's conversation with Zaretta that lasts better than 40 minutes because they talk a lot about just different facets of that. And how do we understand our learners and how do learners understand themselves? All right, and finally, there is the assessment with Tom and Nat, and they talk about the difference between non-negotiables and philosophy and different methods and how are we able to use different methods of assessment for good and not for evil. Tests are not bad, but they have a certain place in learning. All right, that's all. Gotta go. Happy Friday. Bye. Hey, PLN, happy Canada Day, July 1, 2022. Out here for fresh air at 5 this morning. The sun is shining down and it feels so good. Temperature is about 14 degrees Celsius. And we got through our heat wave last week. It became, cool again, but now we've got a nice weekend ahead of us. Awesome. Today I'm going to be heading out to the University of British Columbia with my daughter and her rugby team to watch them play rugby in the provincial regional championships, and it's an opportunity for my daughter, who's 14 years old, to play some high-level rugby. Pretty exciting. It's awesome. It's fantastic. So that's how I'm going to spend part of my Canada Day, and the rest of it, we're celebrating my friend's son's graduation. So that'll be the end of our Canada Day celebration today. Different than normal. I don't know, maybe we'll see the fireworks tonight. We'll see how it goes. All right. So as I'm walking this morning, I listened to Tom Schimmer Show, episode number 75. And Tom, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and sharing you with us as you process and work through a number of different topics. And as you're out traveling and doing different things, you bring some of that to your podcast, and I really appreciate that. The F1 race was a fantastic race, and I'm looking forward to hearing your reflections on your experience as a spectator there at Montreal at the Grand Prix. Okay, so on episode 75, you talked about what is a majority. So people, go take a listen to Tom's thoughts on that. A majority, is it greater than 50.1% of a vote, and how does that represent and make a difference? And in our Canadian parliamentary system compared to the U.S. system and different things like that, what does it mean to get a 50.1 in your class? Do you know the majority of the stuff, or is it squeaking by? Okay, that's that. I got to come back because I got more to say, so I'll be right back in 1 second. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. tweet about your experience, or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.